Okay, well, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dr. David Kanashko. I'm joined by Dr. Lew Lim. Today's webinar is Vielight Photobiomodulation, Illuminating the Brain, the Next Frontier of PBM. Those of you who aren't aware, we have a partnership of both Vielight and BioFlex Laser Therapy to help educate the public and healthcare professionals with respect to all aspects of photobiomodulation. As many of you are aware, Vielight specializes in brain photobiomodulation, and that's the topic of today's webinar. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. I am the moderator. I'm the medical director here at BioFlex. This is recorded, and you will be sent out a follow-up email with a special discount code for Vielight's products, as well as a link to watch the webinar as well. So we always do that. And also, if you have any questions along the way for Dr. Lew Lim, just type them into the Q&A box, and I will get to those at the end of today's lecture and ask Lew as we go along. So before we get started, I want to introduce Dr. Lew Lim. He is a global recognized leader in photobiomodulation, or PBM, specializing in brain function and the immune system. As Vielight's founder and CEO and the architect of its extensive research ecosystem, he drives innovative PBM studies spanning foundational neuroscience to applications in Alzheimer's disease, long COVID, traumatic brain injuries, amongst many other conditions. Vielight's global network of well over 100 researchers at many research institutions advances PBM's potential to address complex medical conditions and enhance quality of life. Dr. Lim's expertise spans neuroscience, engineering, natural medicine, business, and accounting. He holds degrees from the University of California, Berkeley, Duke University, University of Sheffield, Quantum University, alongside fellow-level chartered accountancy credentials from the UK and Malaysia. I guess that means you're good with your money, right, Lew?
I'm not so sure. They keep disappearing the research, what can I say?
By integrating cutting-edge technology and contemplative science, his work offers novel insights into PBM's role in potentially unlocking neural mechanisms of advanced brain states. So I will fade out, and I'll ask Lew to share his screen, and we'll get started with today's lecture.
Before I get going, I'm not assuming that everybody has seen or necessarily is familiar with brain photobiomodulation. So when I keep talking, maybe I just show this is one device that we often refer to, the Vielight Neuro. You put on a head, and the LED and the lights coming out of these LEDs. And there's one intranasal which I feel is really important. I go to that later in the content. It does a lot of the work. So when you do use this particular device, don't forget to use the intranasal piece. Right, I'm going to share my screen. That's right. Am I?
Over the next.
Oops, hang on. I don't know how I got here.
Yeah, just start from the
Yeah, right. Okay, got it.
and then go to full screen.
Right, here you go. Okay.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Good.
All right. Okay, just a quick, declaration of sorts. Our devices are at the moment mainly considered as low risk general wellness device by the FDA. We're a mainly class 2 device by Health Canada. And we have a couple of devices. One is to treat acute COVID, cleared by Health Canada. And we have another like a pain device, which we haven't been actually exposing too much. Now we're alluding to BioFlex to handle a lot of that regarding pain. Okay. So this is a bold statement. Vielight leads the world in brain photobiomodulation technology. Actually, I didn't just put it up, to make a boastful claim. I got this from if you go to AI use ChatGPT, ask which or who leads the world in brain photobiomodulation technology. Hopefully, you see what I saw, which is Vielight. So, and there's a lot of reason behind that. We have a big ecosystem covering research in many areas regarding brain photobiomodulation. Now, we're not like, we think this is going to work and therefore make a claim it's going to work for Alzheimer's or whatever it is. We actually do a lot of work, even in basic science. And today, we are trying to hypothesize why the brain is responding so well to photobiomodulation using the parameters that we do. So the question that people ask, so many of you have used BioFlex, maybe red light therapy and of various forms and so on. Now the question is, how do we know if photobiomodulation does anything to the brain? Now this is a well, call it cartoon if you like, but it represents the fundamental mechanisms of how photobiomodulation works on the tissues, on the cells. I believe this was actually crafted by our team and put on our website, and many people are copying this particular chart. As we learn, it's not complete, but it looks complicated if you're not a neuroscientist or molecular biologist or biochemist. But I just want to say, just summarize it. You look at a red. So when you have wavelengths of between 600 visible red to 850 nanometers near infrared, and a lot of what we do is using 810 nanometers. It penetrates when it reaches the tissues, it hits the mitochondria. Some of the significant actions are the release of nitric oxide back to the body to effect vasodilatation, which is relaxing your blood vessel walls for better blood circulation. Then you get a bunch of other things, like obviously mitochondria, ATP. But on the left side, this shows the electron transport chain, and a lot of the action is in the last terminal. I think David has in his past lectures have very well explained the mechanism, so I won't go too much into it. Now, what is relevant for the brain is that it uh, it it expresses physiological outcomes in many areas. So I'll start from the top over here on the chart. Increased synaptogenesis. This is where the connections are made in your synapses, in your axons. Angiogenesis is the the development of more blood vessels, which leads to increased blood flow, is anti-inflammatory. Anti-apoptosis, I'll cover more of that. It relates to the death of cells. Increased neuron progenitor cells, that's related to stem cells. Increases this antioxidants called superoxide dismutase to neutralize free radicals, and then there's growth factors in neurotrophins and reducing excitotoxicity. Some of the words to summarize it is like growth factors, blood circulation, anti-inflammation, reduced excitotoxicity, and one thing that people sometimes forget to mention is photobiomodulation, when delivered with a reasonable and the right dose, it actually tries to establish the balance in your cells or homeostasis. Now the argument is this, light, red, whatever you call it, doesn't penetrate too deep. And this paper showed it penetrates only 2 to 3 millimeters. But is not established. Others have measured up to 2.5 to 3 centimeters. If it hits 3, it goes pretty deep. And that's the reference for that particular piece of literature. Now, so there is this group that said, you really need really, really high power to reach the brain, say 3 centimeters. And uh, take a look at the pictures. What are they using to measure penetration? Human skin, probably out of a corpse. That's a lamb head. So these are dead tissues. Dead tissues are like just any other, like other organic materials. They don't do much. A lot of things happen when you deliver red or near infrared light to live tissues. So you get this thing, there are people and they're still at it saying you need 10,000 to 15,000 milliwatt centimeter per square centimeter power density to reach the amount of depth. And they're talking about lasers here, not even LEDs, okay? And we only radiate. I can get into the real technical intricacies of how this is measured, but let's say it's in the action spectrum, 75 to 150 milliwatts per square centimeter. Can it work? Hold on. So you want to know, right? Let's just go past this, all the mechanisms, cellular biology, and see what actually happens to the brain. And there's no better standard, from my perspective, than to do real time fMRI in a scanner like this and see what happens in real time to the brain when you try to measure cerebral blood flow and something called BOLD, B-O-L-D, blood oxygen level dependency, which is commonly used in fMRI. And that's done at Baycrest Hospital at the University of Toronto. So we put 2 spots, one on the right temple, one inside the nose. So we managed to do this because we can deliver. You actually cannot put like the normal helmet into an MRI scanner because it's got metal. So to be compatible, we deliver light through optic fiber, laser light, and see what happens in real time. Now there's a lot of colors here, a lot of little figures, but just note, right, on the top half, we deliver on the forehead, measuring with blood oxygen level dependency. And just notice like a red means the brain is responding using this measure. And it is measuring the oxygen level literally. And in the nose, so you see this. Now, this is very interesting. Now, we tested 2 different wavelengths, 808, which is close to 810, and 1064. And then we did that up here, and then we pulse it at 10 hertz, which is alpha, and 40 hertz gamma for both wavelengths. So if you can just separate out the images, you can see that at 810, there seems to be more circulation, if you like, at 10 hertz and 810 than 1064. Okay. And then the intranasal is even more. Look at what 10 hertz does at 810 wavelength intranasally. And take note that we tested, or rather, Baycrest Hospital tested a different power density. The peak actually for the transcranial on the forehead is 150 milliwatts per square centimeter. And the peak for intranasal is only 9. It's like 20 times more efficient. So this is a big takeaway from looking at, if you like, the oxygen level of blood flow in the brain. Then they also did EEG measurement with 256 channel set of electrodes. And this is actually a composite for 43 subjects. And transcranial, I'm not showing intranasal because it hasn't been published. This is published in the preprint. It's out there, the reference here. By the way, I think we will put this up on YouTube. And if you want the slides individually, we might be able to arrange it. But anyway, you know, you can go back to it. There's a lot of data here, even as composite of like a summary. Now, I just want you to spot the differences because there's a lot of nuances and gives us the step forward to try to personalize. Uh, if we have a good understanding of what it's doing to the brain. So, at 810 nanometers wavelength and 10 hertz, let's start with this. You notice that the slow waves is blue. Blue is downregulation. Red is upregulation. It downregulates the slow waves, so it will probably translate into you using this having a better attention. Okay, at the same wavelength, even at 40 hertz. Now at 10 hertz, it increases the power of the fast frequencies like gamma, and then the interesting thing is 40 hertz increase alpha. But if we use 1064, different wavelength, uh, it doesn't quite downregulate delta. It actually increased it somewhat at 10 hertz, but at 40 hertz, it is downregulating somewhat. At 10 hertz, it upregulates alpha predictably, and you deliver 40 hertz gamma, up gamma. So there's a lot in it, and it helps us determine what or how we design our products and what we can do with it, right? So to summarize that, the brain responds significantly to PBM. It is global. The wavelength matters. Power density matters. We are seeing the response to the brain with this work. With say 75, you go beyond 200, it seems to uh, have the response seems to taper off and actually get worse. So this is important to note. There is a window, and at 75, uh, below that, nothing really happens. If someone comes to you and say, "I've got this," you got to ask what the power density is. If it is much lower than this, unless it's intranasal, as I've shown you, you only need 9. You're probably not going to see anything on the EEG or in the fMRI. So that's all I need to say about this. And the frequency matters, right? So why is it happening? Many things uh, can happen to connect between something that if you deliver to a cadaver, not much penetration, but then the whole brain respond in a live person. So these are the possible explanation. ATP is a neurotransmitter that are purinergic signaling, it's a form of protein, biophoton emission, some interesting work here. The people we are collaborating with are looking at the actually magnetic field interactions. And I've got a hypothesis about resonance on molecular structures. I presented in a consciousness conference. I think the YouTube, uh, you know, recording might come out soon on that one. That's for all interesting, but it's another subject. Now we do a lot of EEG work at Vielight, along with our collaborators, and we are incorporating artificial intelligence to see how we can advance the science and personalize treatment eventually. Now, many of you are probably involved in neurorehabilitation, people walking with traumatic brain injury, dementia, brain fog, addiction, a bunch of other things like depression and so on. We've got a lot of studies ongoing and some being considered, some really interesting areas. If we have time, I can talk about that This one with the asterisk are clinical trials. Actually, this is a bit outdated. We got new ones. But you need to know that while I'm talking about this, the devices are okay without us making a medical claim, but we have to do this work to get cleared by regulatory bodies for us to make the claim. But practitioners is really, I think, pretty much up to you. Now, what do we do about traumatic brain injury? I think it's a big area. I want to go to that. There are several studies published already. Um, I might touch on those, but these are recent ones. This is carried out, and I want to show that because anything new for me surpasses what's in the past. So pay attention to the latest data. This is not actually the latest, but this was published last year out of the University of Utah. They looked at, I believe, 49 adults, over 8 weeks, and some were over, and then they'll follow up to 10 weeks. So I just want to summarize the data here. Follow the colors. The, because the next slide is going to show the data. Just so follow the colors. Now the blue. So they examine quite a number of measures. So the blue relates to cognitive function. You can see the significant increase. And these are subjects that have reported traumatic brain injury symptoms after I believe, let me see, doesn't say, after I think at least 3 months after the event. So there are chronic conditions. And they are using the devices 3 to 5 times a week, the one that I basically showed you, and they use gamma. 11% increase in learning and memory, and so on. You can just see the increase in cognitive function, learning and memory, executive function, attention, fluid intelligence, emotional well-being, PTSD, depression, sleep quality, adaptability. And then the physical ability, particularly relevant to, well, improve lifestyle. But if you're an athlete, this is relevant to you. Reaction time, fine motor skill, grip strength, balance. There is quite a lot of imaging, and I can only actually show you this because really dramatic pictures are in a paper that is under peer review right now. I'll talk about it more a little later. But the imaging is showing really quite dramatic effect on the brain. They look from the point of view of the microstructure, how the axons are organized, new cell growth. This is really going to the debate of whether the brain is generating new brain cells from this particular modality. Regeneration, repair of damaged neurons, axons, and then reduced inflammation. I'll cover a little bit more of that later, but watch out for that particular paper. And then when you do look at the structural MRI, you can, a functional MRI, you can see the increased connectivity. They follow the default mode network. It seems to see more connectivity in a default mode network like we've seen in some past work as well. And default mode is quite often referred to, particularly say in Alzheimer's disease and some of these neurodegenerative disease, is well-being, reflects the well-being of your brain. So I talked about that study in peer review, but I just want to go to the outcomes. If you are following American football, this season 24-25 is over in the beginning of the year. For BYU, which is Brigham Young University football team, they had a record, basically the same quarterback, same core players. Last season, the season before, they had a record of 5-7, 5 losses and 5 wins and 7 losses. Then 24-25, they were like undefeated up to October, and then they lost one and missed the main playoff. But they were at that time they were 11-1. This is quite a big change, right? Um, so obviously you can deduce that I'm going to lead you to the fact that they were using the Vielight photobiomodulation device. So we equipped them after a study, which I mentioned, not here. Okay, it's going to be a comment in the paper. Um, After a study, the improvement was so dramatic. We equipped them for the whole season for 24-25 with active devices, and they did really well. It's kind of a record for the university. Just to summarize the using the the way we do it with the parameters, improves these various outcomes: cognitive, psychological, physical performance, helps with depression, anxiety, stress, attention processing speed, grip strength, and resilience. That's over a whole season that that Utah did a study with the BYU football team. It shows really good resilience to tissue damage. So in sports, repetitive head impact is a big thing. Athletes walk out of it, thinks they're okay, but not quite. And when they retire, for many of them who are not, when the brain is not resilient, many of them have this problem actually in CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which you may have heard. A few days ago, there was a big thing about someone who went on a killing spree in I believe it's Washington D.C. I was in a conference, so I didn't get all the news. And he said, you know, he shot himself in the chest and said, use my brain, analyze it. I have CTE. So that is what might happen when you have repetitive head impact or acceleration, this wobbling of your brain in the head. So this was published 2023. Actually, the data was with Dr. Margaret Nace of Boston University for several years. Published this on 4 ex-football players. And I say possible CTE because you don't really know it's CTE until you're dead and do an autopsy, right? Uh, this is patient number 1. He, I just want to show you the, overall picture, right? Let's take PTSD. They, for 8 symptoms are published. This is one of them. They did a study in the clinic. After 1 week, the improvement was quite significant. The study stopped after a week. Then it got worse, got back again. This were all measured. And then after 2 months, okay, Dr. Nazer said you better have this device, use it at home. So he used the neurogamma and he improved and got back to where he was supposed to be, improving. It applies to the other symptoms that you measure for traumatic brain injury too, including how you relate to your community, pain, perception of pain, and so on. Now, this is subject number 1, patient. I want to play what he put him on a video. I, if the volume is soft, turn up your volume.
Love football. I've always had love football. I loved everything about it. Football was my identity. There was a lot of situations where I was aware that I was hurting myself. However, you just don't process it, you don't think about it. It doesn't create any change in your behavior whatsoever. And then there was a building of anxiety that was more than just typical anxiety. It was more of a morbid anxiety, I guess you could say. Social anxiety. These things started hitting in my mid-40s, probably. It started to build to the point where it became almost debilitating at times, where it was affecting my relationship with my wife. It was affecting my job. It was affecting my ability to find peace at all. And it was after some real intense situations that I started to look at the possibility that it was related to football.
I was able to convince him to go to the neurologist and to go through, it was like 10 hours of neurocognitive testing. And then the results were significant brain damage, most likely due to football.
It was suggested that we go visit Dr. Nazer at the Boston VA because she was having success treating vets, Gulf War vets with near-infrared light. So over the next few days, we were tested, we qualified for it, MRIs were taken, and we started a 6-week protocol where they would shine near-infrared light on my head for 20 minutes, 3 days a week. When we went over the testing, both the MRIs as well as cognitive testing, there were significant improvements across the board.
From my observations, he seemed so much better to me. So then when we went over the results of the testing, it confirmed what I had seen.
The results indicated that the infrared light treatments improved my symptoms and my cognitive abilities. When I went off the light, they decreased again. When I went back on the light, it started to improve again. We had the final testing 2 days before we drove out of Boston. And the results of that testing were every bit as good as the in-hospital treatment. It verified that the home device, the Vielight device, was just as effective.
It's hard for me sometimes to express the depth of gratitude I feel for having our lives back.
All I can say is that it has made all the difference in my quality of life. It has caused me to see life different, look forward to moving forward. It's had a tremendous effect on me, emotionally, cognitively. I feel brighter. I feel like the fog is lifting. It's not gone. And the great secondary effects of this is that my workouts have gotten incredibly better.
Okay, Larry is now an adjunct professor at the University of Utah, helping us to drive quite a lot of research over there. I published this last year, and if you go to this article, there's quite a lot of information on why it works for traumatic brain injury. This is going through all these various pathophysiological mechanisms in the brain that makes it happen. I believe quite a number of researchers are citing this now because it just helps them with a lot of work in going down to the research in the mechanisms. Now, so what do we do for the aging brain? This is another area that's relevant to many people. Now, I'm going to go through the rest of the slides fairly quickly because I hope you get a feel of what photobiomodulation can do. On the aging brain, I look at categorizing what's affecting the brain as we age, and how do we get it back into shape, and what are the risks we're looking at. We can categorize into 3 groups here. As there may be more, but this is where I see it. Look at the neurotrophic factors that lead to the creation of brain tissue repair in the brain. Autophagy and senescence, where we're balancing between cells die all the time, is part of the programming. You need to be refreshed so you don't get zombie cells or senescent cells in your body to hinder your health. Then the others that could lead to diseases like Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's. These are the various proteins that lead to it. Now, the good thing is, we go into this various category. There is actually work done to validate, to various extents, some like, suggesting, and some are really well. And you can find studies that support what it does physiologically to the brain. Whether it is BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factors, which is big with people in neurology, and nerve growth factors, and VEGF. And then we published a study on a case of a actually he's still active in professional ice hockey, and with imaging, structural MRI imaging found that there were increased in gray matter, mainly in the hippocampal and the thalamic area. Then when you look at the programmed self-death replacement and so on, there are also studies supporting these mechanisms. And then when you look at, Alzheimer's, which is actually, I just came out of a conference where I did a presentation to the whole conference was almost like 80-90% diagnostic, and they point to beta amyloid proteins misfolding, tau folded misfolding. There is some work being done, and alpha-synuclein relates to a lot to Parkinson's disease. So there are work done here. Now, as we age, the risks get higher. This is the percentage of population with dementia, and here the risk. As we get older, your risk gets higher and higher. So by the time you go 85 plus, your risk is 30 to 40%. So maybe we ought to do something about it, even as preventive to increase your resilience. And most of dementia, I would say, is Alzheimer's disease. So we want to do more work in determining if we can help with Alzheimer's disease. We did case reports. I'll show some of it. At the moment, we have really up-to-date data coming out of University of Toronto. Now, I published this later last year. Again, looking at the underlying physiology of what's happening with Alzheimer's and what photobiomodulation can do about it. Now, this is something I put together. I think it helps people to have a big map of how Alzheimer's disease is happening, starting with environmental factor, your gene leading to the biomarkers, much discussed things like amyloid beta and neurofibrillary tangles, then the symptoms and how it affects the network. So you can go to it. It's pretty dense in facts, and then I talk about the future too. But here are the clinical studies published. We were involved in this one, the first one, the very first one. This one is done at UCSF. There are some good and some not so good studies done, but generally the bottom line is it's safe. Okay, nobody got hurt doing photobiomodulation, but most of them also showed increase in cognition, sleep, and memory. Now this is I can show it because it was presented like literally 2 days ago. Okay, and the investigator at St. Michael's Hospital, University of Toronto, shared the stage with me and showed the evidence in a pilot study. And I can touch on some of these things. This is probably of great interest in those who want to measure the scores that relates to your cognition. So the significant ones are MMSE, mini mental state exams, which is quite commonly used to assess dementia, and CVLT, California Verbal Learning Test. So these are significant improvement. There were improvement in speed too, but hasn't shown the value, the significance, statistical significance. Then they also looked at the the mitochondria. We talk about mitochondria, and these are the expression of activity in the mitochondria, the pyruvic, lactic, and also this ratio is actually quite important to show that the mitochondria is responding, and they are significant. And then inflammation, of course, the common inflammatory marker IL-6, interleukin-6, is down, and this particular one we target, it p-tau 217. Almost the majority of serious Alzheimer researchers in the mainstream in the big universities are focusing on p-tau 217, amyloid beta, and some other variants of p-tau. FDA is looking into how any claim is changing p-tau and amyloid beta, so this is improved. And I believe that if we use an improved version, combining alpha and gamma, this may go into significance. Then the changes in the connectivity in the default mode network. And also, this is another measure of the metabolic activity in the brain, NAA. So that's also improved. So a lot of things, structures in volume. I talked about increased volume. That also improved in this particular study, the thalamus, accumbens, frontal lobe. And they're suggesting that intranasal actually may have amplified the effects in the deeper brain regions. So we still have work to do. We are planning to go to the FDA to do a big study on the mild form of Alzheimer, mild cognitive impairment. It is doing a clinical study of that size is complicated. You don't need to go into details unless you want to know. Now, the other thing that I want this kind of like introduction to vagus nerve stimulation. We've been sitting on this for quite a number of years. I filed a patent. Well, it takes about 5 years to get a patent. So 5 years ago, I filed a patent, and we just got, I think last week, granted by the United States Patent Office. So this is we have the only vagus nerve stimulation device that is non-electrical. In fact, my patent filing, I said, this is an alternative to electrical. Okay, and if you go into vagus nerve, some of you are probably familiar with vagus nerve stimulation. What it does, you do slow breathing to try and get to stimulate your vagus nerve. It does, reduce the stress and other factors that follow it. Heart rate variability. We are actually starting a study with Harvard on the effect of our vagus nerve stimulation on stress and also HRV. We have done internal testing, and they accepted to do the study because they found that very quickly the device actually improved the vagal tone. And so it does this neuroprotection and so on. Now, this is a table that compares the photobiomodulation vagus nerve stimulation, the way we do it, with the electrical. The other forms are all electrical. Okay, whether they put it on the ear or on the neck, the cervical area. We do a cervical and intranasal. There's a lot of information. If you're interested, write to us and we'll give you a copy of the white paper. I think it's also on the website, but not as detailed. But the main takeaway is this: from the initial evidence we've seen, it does at least, as well as the electrical stimulation, at least the non-invasive, those handheld ones or stuck to your ear, in the vagal tone and HRV and so on. But I think what the advantage here is you don't feel anything. If some of you may have tried the vagus nerve stimulation devices out there, you literally have the tingling. If you put over your neck, you ask to put gel for better transmission of the electrical signal, but you don't feel anything with photobiomodulation. The other advantage is you've seen photobiomodulation activate mitochondria. It does all these healing processes along with just purely stimulation. So that's my page for vagus nerve stimulation. We got some work to do to validate it, but it's available right now, For longevity, I just want to summarize that you can do this, use the devices to do that, and you can integrate with other forms of modality like biohacking tools and methods, or track it with Oura Ring, Brain HQ, Whoop, whatever you can do. You can. I think this is a good combination with EEG as well, and just track it. So, but the only real effort with Vielight is you just need to press a button and that's it. We're exploring much deeper into what photobiomodulation does to the brain. Some of you already know that we have this Neuro Pro devices that has more LEDs, and you can point to more parts of the brain. Everything's more powerful. The intranasal is more powerful, and there are preset channels, but you can. The beauty about this is for people who are curious, who are researchers, who want to explore. You can actually change the parameters like power density, turn this one off, that one off, have two different modules talking in phase or out of phase to cut the communication. They can be coupled in different ways, and I think the big influence is really on the pulse frequency. You can pulse it from 0 to 10,000 hertz. Try that and see what happens. If you're a neurofeedback practitioner with QEEG, see what happens to the brain. And we are working on many indications. I'll talk very briefly about long COVID, as based on permission of time. So this paper is just submitted. It's in preprint. Preprint is still, we are going to submit for peer review, but it's out there. You can go read it. I think the submission to the peer review is probably going to be very similar. But we want to focus on what it does to the brain, to brain fog. This is kind of like a summary slide. For those who are under 45 years old, the improvement is significant. This dark blue column here shows that we use a battery of cognitive measures, and the composite reading shows significant improvement. If you're above 45, there's improvement, but not as significant. So it's out there, and some of you might be dealing with patients with brain fog. This is something we want to look at. As a caveat, we did not see, it wasn't clear that it helps with chronic fatigue, which is another major symptom of long COVID. There was one patient who was really, enthusiastic and energetic because it helps her with the chronic fatigue. But as a population, a cohort, in this study, we just did not see significance. So we plan to do another study using the vagus nerve stimulation to help with chronic fatigue, see what happens. I want to touch on autism and the data. This is done independently in Italy by Dr. Palanti in, I think, Verona University. And this is just one of the many measures he used. This is an autism rating scale. So this is a combination of alpha and gamma on the same day. One alpha in the morning and gamma in the evening, and found that I believe he did it over 3 months, and the improvement is quite significant. There is another study done by another group in New Jersey. They did a different method on even younger children and found that it improved. So photobiomodulation is promising. For autism, we plan to apply to Health Canada for approval for this. We intend to apply to Health Canada actually pretty soon for approval for long COVID brain fog in mild cognitive impairments and some other indications. Once again, there's a lot of people involved in the work we do, mainly in North America, but also other parts of the world. Everything from basic science, looking at what happens to the cells, to signaling, to the tubulins, to microtubules, right up to the neurology, symptoms, psychiatry. We're doing a study now on depression. addiction. That is, we've got some good early results with a university in West Virginia. We have all these sports. I talk about sports meditation is pretty crazy in what we are witnessing in getting long-term meditators into an altered state. Um, you know, of course, the immune system on COVID. The COVID effect on COVID, acute COVID, so which is not a thing anymore, is actually approved by Health Canada. They've expanded the indication using the RX Plus to cover upper respiratory tract infection, which covers like viral infection, cold and flu, and COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So my thanks to everybody involved. We have quite a lot of researchers, a lot of nerds in the company, lots of people in top universities working with us. So thank you. I'm open to Q&A.
Hi, Dr. Lim. Thanks. That was really fascinating. There are quite a few comments and questions. I think one or two are kind of related to BioFlex, so I'll kind of mention those. And by the way, if you have any questions, type them into the Q&A box, not the chat box, but I did see a few in the chat box as well. So I'll start here. A question here, does the nasal equipment allow for irradiation of brain via blood, just like BioFlex professional probes do when on the neck? So it's really, the question is about how the light enters the brain via the intranasal route.
Yeah, well, think about it. Why is I thought about the nose being so much more efficient than on the scalp? It's because there's no barrier between the nose, the light in the nose, and the olfactory bulb, and the underside of the brain, the ventral medial prefrontal. There's just so the olfactory is part of the brain, so you're literally hitting the brain at the top of the nasal cavity. And I was the first to figure out. I filed a patent. I've got worldwide patent on using the nose to stimulate the brain. That's how it happens. But if you use like a shorter wavelength, like visible red, so I'm talking about near infrared, that should hit the brain because we see imaging and blood flow and everything. The longer the shorter wavelength, like visible red, may not hit the brain as much, but it goes to your vascular system and gets circulated to the brain, to the body. How do we know this? Because we literally have done measurements on the change in red blood cell properties with that. So it does affect the body in general. Now you combine this, I think it does, the health, the brain health also depends on the health of the body. When you combine, I think it works really well just with the intranasal only. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I believe so. And
Yeah.
and obviously too, the location, like the location of the intranasal area
Mm.
compared to say the neck, obviously you're closer to the brain intranasally as
Yeah.
well.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
effect, the systemic effect is mediated similarly,
Mm.
but the closer you are, the better. A question here is, what is the best device for, oh, sorry, the question was about the biphasic dose response. You kind of touched on that, but the
Yeah.
question is, once the brain recovers with rest, should 6 times a week treatment regime begin again? Will it happen again? This is from Laura Grillo. Her husband is using the neural gamma.
Yeah. So we kind of make a general statement. So if you're healthy, just once every 2 days is good enough because we see the outcomes from various clinical studies. And I say general because everybody is different. I've got people with like just a whiff of photobiomodulation, they cannot take it, they're like intranasal, so low power, they're overwhelmed. So I've got to respect people in that, they're outliers in that part of the spectrum. And those who are like, if you are cognitively impaired, you can handle even more than twice a day, because you don't have the sensitivity. So it all depends. I use it every day. I'm healthy, as you can tell, and nothing bad happens to me when I do that. I think only good things. Experiment, see how you feel. But the biphasic response is pretty real. Like I said, I know we can measure it. We measured it in, with fMRI and EEG. If it's too low, you try and measure using something that's just 5 milliwatts when it reaches your scalp. You have EEG system. Go try it and see if you see anything in real time. We didn't see anything in that and in fMRI. So the power density measure, you need a certain level to penetrate, but too much, as we have seen with the 43 subjects, is 45 now. They're all analyzing the data. Uh, we saw a negative trend after 250 milliwatts, right? So now bear in mind, we use laser to determine it. If it is LED has a spread, LED is not like laser. 808 means exactly 808. LED is big at 808, but it covers like a spread of different wavelengths. And I would say, if we determine our power just focusing on where it's peaking, and I think at that level so far is fine. We we took that peak. We say, okay, well, let's max it 150 milliwatts. I think that's safe, and it gives us the efficacy outcomes too. So that's kind of a complicated, long-winded way to try and explain it. But this field is complicated when you really know what's happening. The biphasic response is for real, yeah. I'll say uh, it's it's too low, nothing happens. I look at now some of it are low. We have 50, the back, because we think it's pretty close, we want to be safe. And the intranasal is just 9. It's 9 because intranasal, there's no barrier, right?
Right. Makes
Okay.
sense. There's a researcher from I think Pakistan, and he had a question about post-stroke recovery. He mentioned that he doesn't find enough evidence, and he's interested in it for treating ischemic stroke.
Yeah.
I'm aware of some of that research. Maybe you can just touch briefly on ischemic stroke recovery and PBM.
Yeah. So there are two kinds of stroke, ischemic or hemorrhagic. I would go for ischemic because I don't know the risk in hemorrhagic. I think you brought up a good pointer there. And well, the studies have not been clear. Have not been clear. There was a big study done. It was abandoned for futility, and I think because the way they do it was wrong. So it's unfortunate that sometimes people refer to that because they try to look at patients within 24 hours, so just suffered a stroke, and believe that treating one time was good enough, which I don't believe. And Dr. Nazer, I mentioned her earlier in my presentation, from Boston University, feels that you should only treat that part of the brain that has suffered. Very commonly is hemispheric stroke on that part that has been damaged. So these are the other things that we think. So the evidence is not clear. Before that particular study, the smaller studies actually showed improvement. Now we have been having discussions with people. We haven't started a stroke study, and but we've got a lot of anecdotal reports. Some of us like like warriors, for you gotta, this is what's happening to my parents, and this is what happened, and they're recovering. You should do something. So all we have is anecdotal right now. I'll say, yeah.
A couple more questions with respect to Vielight. Let's see here. Where are we here? With respect to neurological damage, perhaps related to mycotoxins or mold or TBIs, and quite like 22 years ago. Maybe you can sort of touch on that.
Yeah. So there is a indication that is related to neurotoxins. There are some work done at Boston University and UCSF. UCSF published a couple of papers on Gulf War illness. So some of you may have followed. During the Kuwait War, the American soldiers stationed there came back with Gulf War illness. They fatigue, they have different symptoms of the brain, cognitive impairment, and a bunch of things. And they they believe that the cause of it was all this uh, pit burning the pit and releasing toxins, and toxins got to the brain. Now, the small studies showed that with they used the Vielight gamma and showed that it actually improved significantly. Although, in a condition like this, it's hard to do a big clinical studies. How do you recruit people like that? And this, like many years ago too. But the several cases showed improvement in a neurotoxin related condition.
Yeah. A question here. A few people have asked about if they can get a PDF copy of your presentation. I'm not sure. I know that you'll be doing an email with a link to watch it again. I'm not sure if you make the PDF available or not.
Yeah, I think I believe the team is going to put it up on YouTube,
Okay.
maybe. Um, but we can. You send in a request. I think we'll make the PDF available. Yeah.
Sure. And this comes up a lot. I've seen questions about dystonias, like movement disorders, spasmodic torticollis, especially dystonia when it's a neurological issue. I don't know if you have
Yeah.
any input on that.
Yeah, I haven't. No, movement disorder, again, anecdotal, but there is a study done by an Australian group on Parkinson's disease. It's somewhat like, okay, that's movement disorder as well. And they used the gamma in the earlier study combined with treatment of the microbiome in the gut. Now, so they found improvement, and then it wasn't very clear. But that for the first study, they had pretty good outcomes. Then they did something bigger, and there were placebo effect, and then they did a longitudinal observational study and found that okay, now over the years we have overcome the placebo. Photobiomodulation seems to work. I guess in terms of evidence that it was, well, that's one study that's got most, but movement disorder comes in various form. Like it could be cerebellar rooted, and that is one of the reasons why. And here's anecdotal. There were people with essential tremors, and we found that when we treated, that's why we upgraded the neuro in this latest version. The Neuro 4 has got an extra module pointed to the cerebellum. The cerebellum is important, not just movement disorder that like tremors, but also related to, it's connected to the vestibular system. It is also important, say, for traumatic brain injury because uh, quite a number of studies have shown that in blast injury, the cerebellum also presents injury as well. So I guess I'm going a bit sideways to TBI, but that's, I think
Yeah.
treating cerebellum is a shot. Now, when we combine the intranasal, it may hit the brainstem. So automatic autonomic system will also, they're all related to the brainstem. They may also be improved. And this is one of the areas where we're trying to do to look at, from a perspective of vagus nerve stimulation. And also in meditation, we want to know, okay, we want to put people into fMRI when they go to this altered state. Is it going deeper than other studies are showing, maybe in the autonomic system? So
Yeah.
anyway, that's yeah.
And a few people have commented about how the density of hair, the color of hair, like black hair, whatever, what kind of
Yeah.
impact that has on the transcranial portion, obviously intranasal. That might be part of the reason why that's a bit more effective as well. But perhaps you can comment on
Yeah,
that.
I tell you, hair is a factor, skin color is another factor. So literally, that that preprint paper that I showed actually relates to also what they found at University of Toronto, the effect of skin color. So pale skin have a better effect. Darker skin, because of the melanin, you absorb some of the effect. We haven't measured hair, but hair is not like opaque, so there's space in between that the photons can go through. And how much of obviously is a barrier. And so just speaking rationally, I think hair does have is a barrier. The more hair you have, the thicker hair you have, obviously is a barrier. Skin color is also not important. So up here on the head, we have that's why we have more power on those on the top of the head, a bit less at the back because the hair is less of a barrier, and that on the forehead is has a lower power than that. That is part of the reason, but it is still we need much more power than the intranasal. For intranasal, it doesn't matter what skin color you have, right? It just hits the brain. That's why the intranasal is very important. So in summary, hair, skin color have an effect, and um, I guess that's where the intranasal plays a big part.
Obviously, because a big part of your audience are BioFlex users or clinicians or patients, and they're sort of sometimes asking, the difference and that kind of thing. And I just want to make sure everyone understands. Vielight is expertise is in brain photobiomodulation and neuromodulation. Our equipment, while we have used it obviously for different applications. We don't do intranasal. And also, while we can use specific frequencies similar to Vielight, their equipment is specifically designed, as Lew was showing you, to treat specific areas of the brain, that kind of thing. So, typically we recommend treating with our equipment, behind the neck and around the neck, that kind of thing. The Vielight equipment is researched and used for very specific applications. And I encourage you to reach out to the folks at Vielight for more information. What equipment will be best for your specific question as well too. I'm going to do one last attempt at trying to make sure everyone understands biphasic dose response. Laura asked again, but and so her comment is her husband's using the neural gamma for TBI and MCI and had what she says a biphasic dose response. I'm just going to comment first and then let you say something. Biphasic dose response literally means if there's not enough light energy, there's no response. If there's too much, like over the window of effective dose, then you may not see a positive effect. So if someone has a reaction or like some type of post-treatment, like in this case, she mentioned he became extremely fatigued after a period of rest, treating only 3 times a week, but now he's back treating 6 times a week. And her question was, will he eventually become overstimulated again, or has his brain now adapted and he won't be fatigued again? I don't not necessarily know if that references biphasic dose response, but maybe you can comment, Lew, with respect to that question.
Yeah, I go back to people are different, the brains are different. And so in this case, we got a lot of people who've, clinical studies, they've done like once a day, 6 days a week, and they get better without any side effect. But if you feel that the patient is fatigued, then you really ought to cut back. So this person is, probably releasing more uh, free radicals. So that is there's this reactive oxygen species is known to be released by the mitochondria upon activation by photobiomodulation. It's usually transient. It triggers the body to respond better. But when you have too much of it, your body is not keeping up clearing these free radicals. So that is possible um, explanation of why this is the case. But then, we are the product of our genome. So our genome, it gets translated into how your proteins is expressed and how it deals with all these other things. So yeah, if it's, I guess, some training, if you do this, cut back and then slowly progress into um, more dosage, you might build a tolerance and able to deal with it. But yeah, definitely experiment with it.
Yeah, I think that's the key is that everyone responds slightly differently to photobiomodulation and for different factors that Dr. Lim mentioned. So you do sometimes have to fine tune with respect to how often you treat or the actual dose that you're receiving. One last question, Lou, and then we'll let you go. And that question is about you mentioned about stimulating the vagus nerve, but specifically, now I know with respect to a pacemaker, whether or not it's safe to use photobiomodulation for stimulating the vagus nerve in this case, and a person having a pacemaker.
I I don't think it affects. You see, pacemaker, it's kind of run on, it's kind of electrical and magnetic. Photobiomodulation does not emit any magnetic field, so it wouldn't affect the function of the pacemaker. Actually, I showed Larry Carr, the ex-football player. So he recovered, and he's quite. I mean, everybody gets older, and I didn't know he has a certain condition with heart rhythm. You know, I don't want to go to detail because I haven't spoken to him about talking about. I think Larry will talk about it in public. But so he said actually it improved with the vagus nerve stimulation after we introduced it and he used it, whereas the neuro did not have any effect. So here's one. Maybe one day he'll talk to you guys about his experience.
Yeah, I mean, typically I say that you can, it's not a contraindication to use photobiomodulation on a patient with a pacemaker, exactly for the reason you mentioned is that it's not electrical stim. It won't interfere with the electrical current or what have you of the pacemaker. So I know there are a few other little questions here and there, more specifics either about BioFlex or Vielight. I would ask you just to reach out to Vielight with respect to if the equipment, what best equipment is best for your specific scenario. Look out for an email that will be following this with a link to watch the webinar again and also with a special discount code for BioFlex users and practitioners or anyone watching this for a discount on Vilight's equipment. Dr. Lim, I want to really thank you for presenting this great information and the cutting edge research that you've been doing. And it certainly is really quite expanding our knowledge and clinical use. A lot of people are interested in different conditions from autism to stroke. We still have a lot of work to do, or you have a lot of work to do. And every year we learn more. So the key thing is that photobiomodulation is completely safe. We know that. So it's a kind of therapy that is non-invasive and makes a lot of sense to try regardless of what's going on. Lou, did you have any last words before we end the webinar?
No, I mean, I guess, that's why we wake up in the morning because you have work to do and this all exciting work, right? Is discovery. Follow us because there are new papers coming out literally, I think the next few days, and we don't stop. And our products, keep improving because it kind of reflects the data we are discovering. So I there's a lot. I say that what's published is only like 40% of what we know. We got, a lot more. We got like, you know, tons of EEG data that sometimes we're literally running a computer to tease out where the most intense activity in the brain is and stuff like that. So we want to eventually personalize treatment.
Yeah.
But followers, and well, I want to thank everybody to,
Yeah,
who
and
joined the time here.
I do want to mention that both Vielight and BioFlex will be doing a joint in-person and broadcast live seminar September 6th and 7th at Sheraton Hotel near the airport. The first day is on the fundamentals of photobiomodulation, and the second day is specifically traumatic brain injuries using both Vielight and BioFlex. So look to our website, and I should be posted on your website as well too, Lou, to join us live in person. You can also sign up to watch it live online as well too. But come out if you have a chance, because then you can see all the equipment. Hopefully Lou will be there as well. And thanks again, everyone, for joining for today's webinar.
This is Sheraton in Toronto, right?
Yes, Toronto, Mississauga. Yeah.
Oh,
Not
Mississauga.
Hawaii,
Right.
where I wanted it, but apparently it's
Okay.
in Toronto. All right, everyone, take care. Thanks again, Dr. Lim.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Bye now.
David, for hosting this.
Welcome. Bye now.
Bye.